So after creating the heavens and the earth, God created Adam and Eve. And the first thing he said to them was, "Don't." "Don't what?" Adam replied. "Don't eat the forbidden fruit," God said. "Forbidden fruit? We got forbidden fruit? Hey, Eve, we got forbidden fruit." "No way. Yes way. No way. Yes way." "Don't eat that fruit," God said. "Why?" "Because I'm your father and I said so," God said, wondering why he hadn't stopped after making the elephants. A few minutes later, God saw the kids having a forbidden fruit snack, and he got angry. "Didn't I tell you not to eat the fruit?" the first parent asked. "Uh-huh," Adam replied. "Then why did you?" "I don't know," Eve answered. "She started it," Adam said. "Did not, did so, did not." Having had it with the two of them, God's punishment was that Adam and Eve should have children of their own. Thus the pattern was set, and it was never changed. But there is a moral to the story. If you have persistently and lovingly tried to give your children wisdom and they haven't taken it, don't be hard on yourself. If God had trouble with his children, what makes you think it would be a piece of cake for you? Okay, that's not exactly the way the story is going to read tomorrow morning, but it could have been. Yes, once again, we Jews are starting over our Torah reading cycle, and we're beginning, well, at the beginning of everything. This past Saturday night and Sunday, we celebrated the holiday of Simchat Torah, the festival of the joy for the Torah. We had our Hakkar Fot celebration in the parking lot on Saturday night, and there, Cantor Finkelstein read the last few verses from the book of Deuteronomy. There we read that the 40 years of wandering in the desert had finally come to an end. We read that Moses, our teacher and our leader, who was then 120 years old, had come to the end of his life. And although he would not complete the task of bringing the children of Israel into the promised land, he had successfully completed the mission of taking them out of slavery in Egypt and leading them through the desert for all those grueling, hot, exhausting years. The Torah that began with the word Bereshit in the beginning concluded with the word Yisrael, the name God gave to our ancestor Jacob, the name by which our people are called in the Bible, and also the name the Bible uses for the promised land, the goal of all our aspirations. What began in Genesis with paradise, the Garden of Eden, an idyllic land of plenty where there are no worries, ends in Deuteronomy as our people are poised on the edge of entering our people's promised land, our own small corner of God's creation. It may not be paradise, but it is for us the next best thing. Mankind does not really last long in paradise. Adam and Eve are evicted almost as soon as they're placed there. And oddly enough, the Torah ends before the children of Israel actually settle in the land of Israel. The Torah is therefore a book about journeys and not so much about destinations. Goals? Sure, absolutely. But destinations? At least insofar as we actually get to live in them, not so much. By the way, did you ever wonder why God does not destroy the Garden of Eden after he expels Adam and Eve? I mean, if he really did not want us to ever go back there, why not just eliminate the place? Nuke it, or at least blast it with fire and brimstone or something biblical like that. But God doesn't do that. Instead, he places two cherubs, two guardian demons, with the body of a lion, the wings of an eagle, and human heads, and a fiery, ever-spinning sword, like lightsaber from Star Wars, to block the entrance and to keep humans out. The fact that God did not destroy paradise perhaps hints to us that ultimately God really wants us to find our way back there again sometime, or at least to dream about it, or strive to get there, or maybe to recreate its wonders in our very real world. And so the Torah is about human journeys, the human journey to discover paradise, or to make our own world more like paradise. and the journey of the Israelites to return to their homeland, the Promised Land, the land flowing with milk and honey. And the Torah is also about life's stumbling blocks along the way, dangerous people we will encounter, plagues that are all too familiar with us today, the constant need for food, clothing, and shelter, the troubles that we bring upon ourselves because of our own shortcomings and personal failings. But whether we're striving to return to Eden or to return to Israel, it's interesting that the Torah sees the ultimate destination of humans to be right back where we began. And so perhaps it's fitting that just as the Israelites are poised on the edge of the Promised Land, we roll the Torah back to the beginning and we start all over again with Adam and Eve in the garden. The ending is really just an opportunity to begin all over again. You know, the ceremony that commemorates the end of high school or the end of college is not called completion. It's called commencement. Commencement. That's odd, isn't it? Or maybe it's not, because the end of high school marks the beginning of the next stage in life, whether it's college, trade school, or a job. And the end of college marks the beginning of the next stage in life. The Torah begins in the book of Genesis, our Eitz Chaim commentary tells us, with chaos, and with God imposing order on chaos. It concludes with a nation of men, women, and children poised on the banks of the Jordan River, ready to begin perhaps the greatest spiritual adventure of all time, the effort to translate God's will into the daily life of a community. On Simchat Torah, the commentary continues, we complete the Torah and we proceed in two opposite directions. First, we go back to the opening words of Genesis, and we begin the story all over again, finding new insights on every page, not because the Torah has changed, but because we have changed since we read it the year before. And then in the Haftarah for Simchat Torah, we go forward into history to read about Joshua's leadership of the people after the death of Moses. The ending is therefore a beginning anew, a rediscovery of our past and the wisdom we have gained. And it's also the beginning of the rest of the story, the next chapter in our lives. And so it is with a bar mitzvah like Aaron's. A child who reaches the age of 13 is now considered to know and understand the difference between right and wrong, good and evil, and we now consider them responsible for their actions and responsible members of the Jewish community, able to take up the duties as well as share in the privileges of this new responsibility. Becoming a bar or bat mitzvah means coming to an end of a stage of childhood, but it also represents a beginning, the beginning of a new stage of maturity and responsibility. There are many such stages in life. Becoming married means the end of life as a single individual and the beginning of life in partnership. Becoming a parent means the end of, well, some might say the end of peace and quiet in the house, but let's say it's the end of being responsible only to your partner. It's the beginning of a responsibility to a new, younger life. It's a responsibility that comes with a lot of love, joy, and excitement of watching this new person grow and develop, with an understanding that you will have an important part of that growth and development. And finally, we have in Judaism a weekly reminder of this cycle of beginnings and endings. Every week comes to an end on Friday afternoon, and as the sun sets, we take a pause and celebrate the Sabbath. It's a day to refresh our souls, to revive our spirits, and renew our faith. We pause to reflect on the journey of our lives, and perhaps to contemplate course corrections and adjustments. But then comes Saturday night, and once again we begin a new week. Just as we will read in the Torah portion tomorrow morning that God created in 6 days and rested on the seventh, we too are commanded not just to rest on the seventh day, but to work and be creative on the other 6 days. This weekly cycle gives us the opportunity to see the journey of life in smaller, more manageable portions. Ruth Bryn wrote a beautiful poem about the completion of the Torah reading cycle, and I want to conclude my remarks this evening with an excerpt from this poem. We have finished the Torah now, reading of the last days of our teacher Moses. And we have begun at the beginning once more. We have moved from the story of Israel back to the creation of light, resolved to make a new and better beginning in our study of Torah. Though we move in cycles, like every work of your hand, we're not bound to a wheel revolving on a fixed axis. We believe we can move forward. Inspire us, our Creator, to continue the cycle of Torah. Strengthen us to renew the life of Israel. Help us to bring your light to our world. Speed us toward the bright morning of peace. Shabbat Shalom.